Hello and welcome to this panel of Turkey's Corporate Reputation Summits. My name is Ceyhun Emre Doğru. I'm the Secretary General of Public Affairs Institute of Turkey. And today with me, we have a very distinguished guest, Mr. Fady Rahmé. Mr. Rahmé, welcome.
Thanks for inviting me.
Fady Rahmé is a professor of SciencesPo Paris. He's also Regional Vice President of MENAT of Japan Tobacco International. He's in charge of corporate affairs, communications, and compliance functions. And he's also the author of a very interesting book, which I had the chance to read very recently. It's called Enveloping, or Interacting with the Operating Environment During the Age of Regulation. So I'm sure that we are going to have a very interesting discussion today, as we have a person who has both academic and professional experience about the topics that are very interesting to our audience. So, Fady, so we are going through very interesting times, obviously, very uncertain times. And in your views, what went wrong during this COVID crisis in terms of interaction between society, public authorities, and businesses? And which was the impact on our operating environment as you have observed it?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me. This is a moment that I cherish a lot, which is to join your summits on a regular basis in Turkey. And I'm sure the work you are doing is exceptional in setting the foundation of our profession as a strategic enabler to corporations. But to go back to your questions, the idea of what went wrong has long moved in my head, asking myself, why have we moved from a situation where we could have controlled a disease, where science could have brought to us interesting solutions, to a total panic mode? Why didn't we reach something more balanced in the beginning? And effectively, now we're in a more balanced way of managing things. But we can consider that the first 3-4 months of the crisis, we were in a panic mode. And effectively, this is due to the combination of the 3 elements that we usually put on the table to avoid panic mode in crisis management, and which are the 3 lacks. Lack of clarity on what is happening. Is it a simple flu? It is a killing disease? Do we have a technical solution to address it? Is it true that people are dying in the streets? So we did not understood very precisely what it is, while technically we could have. So there was a lack of understanding of what is happening and what is a worldwide pandemic situation, which is something that haven't happened in a human being history, to have something that is of this magnitude, because a human being was less traveling than they do now, okay? To be a disease for which you can have a solution, so at least you can find a way to address it. If you remember the Spanish flu, it was 50 million deaths. If we remember the cholera, if we remember these type of diseases, we were totally unable to address them. But this time we had a pandemic. It was total. We could have solutions, but we were not finding them. This has created the second lack, the lack of trust in the source of information. Governments and scientific committee appeared also as less knowledgeable than we would have thought they would be. So we were doubting the information we were receiving. And the third level is the lack of ability to put the communication at its real place. We cannot say it is a simple flu. It is not a killing disease that will decimate half of the population. Many of the things we have heard are completely irrational. I was in one of the countries during my last trips that is a 5 million population, and people were talking about 300,000 deaths, while the reality was something like 80 deaths and 1,000 people in hospital. And there it takes me back to managing crisis. And managing crisis is about establishing clarity on what is happening, establishing a knowledgeable source that can talk with reason and with facts and with something that reflects the exact reality. And three, a mastering of the communication, not to give fake information, but to put the information at its place. And in that, I think this is the most important part of what went wrong. And then we see how things are changing for society. But if I want to sum it up, I would say yes, something went wrong in the way we interacted with this crisis. And probably the months to come will give us some answers on that.
And if this went wrong, I mean, as you said, there are things that went wrong at different levels, at 3 levels. Would you also say that you have observed things that went well or carried some sort of a positive perspective?
Of course. A lot of things went well. In completing the image of what went wrong, I'd like the audience to think about 2 basic things we have changed in our behavior. For the first time, since probably thousands of years, we stopped shaking hands. Shaking hand is the sign of peace. It was created to show the other party that you do not have a weapon, and so you're ready to give peace. And we stopped shaking hands. The second thing, probably for us as communitarian societies, probably more the Orientals than the others, we stopped kissing our kids and the loved ones. And this is a transformational change in the way we see things. But is it fully gloomy? No. Of course, it is a very serious pandemic, but it has brought to us things that went well. For example, we choose life over economy. It is extremely rare in history of leadership when you are confronted to this type of ethical situation, whereby, because we were not knowledgeable enough, we had to do total lockdowns, which will have a serious impact on the economy, but we did not want our doctors and hospitals to be in a war situation where you have to do choices between the people you save and the people you don't save. And this ethical issue was put in front of regulators and governments. And despite the importance of the economical crisis, as a human being, I am happy to see that regulators have chosen life over economy, at least during the time where visibility was not there. And rapidly, they have to move into places where we can save both. But this ethical issue is re-putting back the idea that there are still values in humankind, and one of it is life. The second thing, we give a break to Earth. This may appear to you as a poetry, but effectively in managing our operating environment, we were stressing Earth so much that the indicator of consumption of resources that has been created in France to calculate the resource we consume per year according to the resources generated by Earth, we were finishing the account in December, then in September, and in 2019, we ended the possible consumption of resources of Earth in April. So it was dramatic. I was confined in London. It was a total confinement. And we heard back the birds. We saw back many flowers we did not see. And probably each one of us around him would have realized that in total lockdown, we gave a breath to Earth. We started seeing back turtles in the Mediterranean Sea. So life has overcome our ability to destroy the resources. And this is not poetry. This is a serious economical issue for the future of mankind. We gathered resources. We relearned the multilateralism, which is you cannot be happy alone. We rediscovered the movement of population. Is it needed? As much needed as we think it is? The way we consume energy, is it needed as much of what we're doing? We rediscovered solidarity between people with their direct neighborhood, because now they live in more closed space. And more so, the most important transformational change we have seen is the ability to have 9 vaccines in 1 year to address a pandemic that was worldwide, threatening all the populations. Reaching this result is a real scientific breakthrough. For those of you who are my generation, you would remember HIV. Probably we spent 5 years before understanding what the disease was, and 10 years to find the tritherapy. In the meantime, it has disseminated a full generation of Africans, more than other continents, but also in Europe, in every way. It took us probably 10 years to be on the safe side of HIV. Today, we have many reasons to think that by March, we will have operating vaccines, we will have a very good protocol to treat the disease, we will have hospital capabilities to address all the casualties, etc. And this is transformation. This is very new in the history of mankind, and it is the combination of collective effort, science, data, and contribution of businesses. So in a nutshell, this is what I can consider has went well.
Yeah.
Of course, this crisis will generate changes in many things.
Yeah. So as you said, yeah, there are positive and negative sides of every change and every transformation. And one question that I would like to ask you is that in your book, in Enveloping, you develop a concept which is where businesses and regulators interact with the operating environment, which is what you call enveloping. So in terms of the COVID-19 crisis, what do you think we have learned from this crisis? And what are the changes we can expect in the way that businesses and regulators interact with the business environment, the operating environment?
I would like to say on this, the dilemma of do I privilege life or business? Regulators has also to take into consideration that society cannot stop working. And we saw progress in cases where regulators and businesses were able to sit at the same table and have a knowledgeable conversation that combines at the same time the need for regulator to protect the population and the need of certain working conditions to be able to continue to produce for businesses. So the distribution, the opening of the factory, what we call the sustainability of the business process had to be addressed in a fully regulated situation. So in a nutshell, when this crisis started, regulators or government took charge. They say now the call is in my hand. The magic hand of the market that has driven the thinking of liberalism should be stopped, and someone is giving the orders. That authoritarian protective attitude, which is correct when you have a pandemic, has been balanced by the fact that in many places, probably not everywhere, but in many places, regulators have called businesses to sit at the table and tell them, let's agree together. How can we do it? And this is what has generated what we call the 4 or 5 scaling of lockdown. What do I open? What do I close? How do I open? Of course, it did not happen smoothly. It never happened smoothly because it was not planified. And what went wrong is also that we were lacking a plan for a global pandemic, okay? But there have been areas of work, and suddenly we discovered by talking together, by managing the thing together, what will change. For example, we will approach cities and real estate and office differently. We were doing tests on 4 working day per week in the office and 1 working day from home. And we were all hesitant trying to find a way. Now, with the regulators, we know that we can work from home. This is a discovery that will change, for example, the way our cities are built. Our cities will be more integrated, probably more digital, but also with different areas of reconvening together. Probably not everyone will have to live in a city, and the density will change because we will be able to commute in less days and in less times to the offices. But this also is causing questions. I saw a very interesting statistics about France, whereby they say 18% of marriage are, in cities I'm talking, are done between people who met in their workspace. So can the workspace become totally virtual? I would say no, because in cities, working place is the place of your socialization. But should it continue to be 5 working days from 8 to 6 in the office, all physically present in the same place? Probably not. And this will change the space we need, the offices we need, the place where we live, etc. Consumers have got into the game with a different approach, which is what we call direct to consumer. And for that, I ask you to have a look on the acquisition of a new company by Nestle. Nestle paid nearly $1 billion to acquire an American company called Freshly, which is a company that produces organic menus in their own kitchen, delivered to your house. So you eat fresh, you eat organic, and it is prepared by a chef, delivered to your home. So you imagine that during lockdown, these type of company have exploded. There is the same that is called Mindful Chef in the UK, and Nestle is in contact with them. Probably all the nutrition groups in the world are looking now to this direct to consumer. The shops, the retail, the malls. How are we going to shop? We were all asking the question of shopping online. It has dramatically changed during the past 10 months because we discovered that it is a wonderful way of doing things. Will we stop going to the mall? I don't think so. This is more related to socializing, but will we be buying more online, easier? Yes, and it has been an accelerator. Regulators with businesses should now address this type of things. The terms of payment, the security of delivery, all what follow that. And the technological backbone we need to have. And the conversation have started. Do we have enough internet connections? Do we have all fiber optics? What is the digital divide between those who have and those who do not have? How do we supply this for 5G? Now we're in the heart of this conversation between businesses and regulators. It is like it was a couple who did not know each other, and suddenly, because of a crisis, they discovered each other. And now we hope that this will continue that way. So maintaining the business flow has forced the two parties to talk together more than usual. And in that, we have seen a serious change. And this has transformed our function. We were, for many companies, a support function, a nice to have function. But today, if we resume what we were talking, we're talking about 2 things. One is communication and the panic mode. The second one is cooperation with regulators and the maintaining of the business flow. And effectively, as businesses, this is what was important for us. And communication is not only about our employees, it is also about our consumers, it is also about the public, it is also about our future prospects who are looking to us as clients or as potential employees, asking themselves, have we been the proper citizen we should have been? Have we been up to the challenge of a worldwide pandemic? With the resources we have we contributed? There is this wonderful idea of the contributing. How much are you contributing? And the Generation Z and the Generation Y of employees will be asking us this question, have you contributed? And we will have to be able to give an answer. And not answering is not a solution. So on that, the pandemic, either COVID-19 or any unfortunate future one, has been a revelator of what corporate affair and communication function is in that invoking approach. None of us was able to sort it out alone because the magnitude of the crisis was managed. So the couple was forced to go together on the same table. But effectively, as corporations, we learn that this is not a gimmicky tool to have. It is not nice to do some and a cocktail affair operation with the regulator. We need to have professionals who are extremely competent and knowledgeable, because what they will negotiate one day is the continuity of our business. And this is what happened. And corporate affairs should be people who know how factory works, how tracks works, how distribution is done, what is the viability of the product. They need to be knowledgeable. It is not cocktail affair. It is essential corporate affairs. And for many GMs I have met during this period, they said this was the strategic pillar I was able to leverage to continue to operate, because suddenly my only interlocutor became a regulator. And suddenly the sustainability of my business depends less on the quality of my product than on the quality of my communication. So you became as important as my factory. And this is a lot. If we can take something positive from a drama like the COVID pandemic, is that for us as corporate affairs, it has revealed our strategic role. Of course, it was explained in many books, in many examples, etc. But now people have seen it live. CEOs have understood that the continuity of their business was to have been able to build for years corporate affair and communication capabilities. So yes, there is this issue. More is to come in the future when we will go into reputation. This is also another chapter that will be extremely important in addressing how have you behaved during the past crisis. Yeah. Have you been the proper corporate citizen? And I've seen many. I know, for example, in my company, but we're not here to talk about my company, the transformation people have done to produce masks, to produce sanitizers, to help their local community around them, to have access, to give access to health, to internet, to clean water, these type of things. And every corporation has to put itself into the questioning of a generation that would be more looking to a purpose in life than only a job that is well paid. And who would ask us at that time, what did you do? And how can you prove to me that you have done what has to be done? And the role, finally, the role of this function in internal communication was also extremely important, because corporations, at least in the ones I follow on and including ours, has put into the mind of managers, rightly so, that you're not in charge only of seeing if people are working in terms of being a headmaster in school. You have to follow with your employee about their healthcare situation, about their morale, about their psychology. Because by transforming the workplace, in many cases, you have put in people in very narrow places where it was very hard for them to manage in the same time their private life, their business life, and their healthcare, their moral healthcare, their mental healthcare was important to be checked on. And this, our employees will ask us, what have you done during that period to me when I was in hard time? It was not only about saving my job, it was also taking care or caring about me. So this is how I see this transformational event have impacted our business, and I hope I have answered your questions.
Yeah, Simon, that's a very interesting point. And the changes to the operating environment also transformed the corporate affairs function and made it a core strategic function of organizations, which is very important. And I would like to tie that to a point that you mentioned a bit earlier and elaborate on that, which is the question of reputation. So the particular issue of reputation management, obviously, it will be an issue after this crisis is over. So what is your view on that? I mean, how a crisis like this will impact of business's reputation now and also in the future?
Effectively, what is extremely important is that reputation management is not something you do as a window dressing. And my message to all corporations is that you have to take it very seriously, because your audience is taking it very seriously. The idea in a small world like ours where data is accessible to many, where information is accessible to many, you have to be extremely prudent, not to engage into something that is a pure window dressing to say, I have a good reputation. Your reputation, first and foremost, is built by your actions, not by your communication. And we should not confuse. And we can fool some people some of the time, but you cannot fool everyone every time and all the time. At a point, someone will realize that you're doing a window dressing. So this type of pandemic that calls for the solidarity of everyone, the understanding of everyone, from his personal behavior, wearing masks, making a social distancing, to his collective behavior as accepting lockdowns, a limitation to his liberty, losing his job, closing his business. This that has called so much effort, for so much effort, is also a way of addressing the real question about who you are and what are your real values. Mm-hmm. And your reputation will have the dimension of your real values, not of your projected falsely values, because this will not last. And community around businesses have understood, like in all crises, you realize who is up to it and who is not. This time, we had to demonstrate worldwide, in many countries, in different places, in different settings, what do we have in our hearts and in our brains when there is a crisis? And it was a moment of truth. So I call on companies who are thinking about that, build on what you have done, if you have done what you have done is positive, or understand why you did not do the right thing to do and work on correcting it. Because the reputation will become the issue of the coming years due to the spread of knowledge, access to data, the people we deal with have access to, the people we want to employ, the consumers we want to have, the business partners who are agreeing to work or not with us. Many of this will be based on reputation. And what you have done during the crisis is a pillar of your reputation because it was a moment of truth.
Fady, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. And we are very fortunate to have you here. It was a very insightful conversation. And once this crisis is over, we are very much looking forward to hosting you in Istanbul, which is, I know that you have a personal connection to as well. So we are hoping to see you next time in Istanbul.
Yeah, it is always a pleasure to come to Istanbul. It is always with big pride that I join your group and I join the university. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Thank you.
And I wish you all a good day.